All right. Good morning, everyone. Today we are actually going to talk about a place in the Bible where Jesus heals the official son. So, what I did for this session is that I went through John 4, and then I did not actually start from 46 to 52, but I went all the way from the first verse, so we get the context of that, and then we read that, and then we understand the where these verses lie, and then we can connect everything together. So this is kind of put in four areas: Jesus and the Samaritan woman, the disciples return and the marvel, and what many Samaritans believe, and then finally Jesus heals the official son. So Jesus and the Samaritan woman. When the Lord realized that the Pharisees were aware that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples, he left Judea and returned to Galilee. Now he had to pass through Samaria, so he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Since Jacob's well was there, Jesus, weary from his journey, sat down by the well. It was about the sixth hour. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. "You are a Jew," said the woman. "How can you ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Then Jesus had answered, "If you knew the gift of God and who is asking you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman replied, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then will you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock?" Then Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a fount of water springing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." Jesus told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." The woman replied, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are correct to say you have no husband. In fact, you have had five husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. You have spoken truthfully." The woman said, "I see that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews say that the place where one must worship is in Jerusalem. Believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. But a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such as these to worship Him. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship him in spirit and in faith. The woman said, I know that Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus answered, and this is really important here, I who speak to you am he. I who speak to you am he. There's a lot to digest, Johnny, and I have, I mean, it's very interesting where it started and where it kind of ended in this famous words, I who speak to you am he. So I just wanted to get a context on how, uh, how this woman came in touch with Jesus, and then how he is able to tell her that, I'm the one that you're looking for. That I'm the one who's speaking to him. I am the one who's the Messiah, right? So, Johnny, a little bit of structure here. I'm lost here. That's why you're on mute.
Yeah, I think you're leading up to your passage that you're going to focus on today, right? But
Yes,
we had actually talked about this a little bit. I don't know if you were there last time when we talked about God and his um, essence of his who he is, since we actually had talked about this passage a little bit. But the Samaritans are different from the Jews. They're kind of like related, but Samaritans were kind of looked down upon by the Jewish people. So they were kind of separated from each other. And Jesus reaching out to the Samaritan, and not just a Samaritan, but a woman, a Samaritan woman, and not just any Samaritan woman, but a woman who is not known for righteous living. Um, for Jesus to meet with her alone, um, by the well is quite scandalous, if you will. Um, but Jesus was interested in being at that point for that one person, right?
yes.
He had the crowds following him elsewhere, but he removes himself from all of that, and he is here for the sole purpose of meeting with this one person. And essentially gets into a conversation, and you can kind of see how Jesus is genuinely having a heart-to-heart conversation with her, and then slowly but surely leads her to the point where he reveals to her who he actually is. And it's quite amazing to just see that. And like you said, that the verse that you just highlighted is one of the capstones of this passage. Absolutely. He
Yep.
is the
And
Messiah.
also, the she told him that the Messiah is coming, and then when she already knows that, but then that's when Jesus reveals that I am who I who speak to you am he. So that's she knows it's coming, and but then Jesus reveals that I'm going to reveal and I'm going to speak to you. So
Yeah.
There's one thing that I have to say. So the Samaritans, they believe only in the first five books of the Old Testament. So they believe only in the Torah. And in the Torah, Moses does say, there will come a prophet after me, and that's the Messiah. So that's why everybody knows that the Messiah is coming. That part they are all sure. And then saying that Jacob's well, that and all is there in the in the first captured in the first five chapters. So she's part right there. And the time is coming when we do not know, that happens, that is revealed in the Revelations, actually, where so until then, even the Jews are believing salvation, Jerusalem is the place to be. But then when you get to Revelations is where you see, that worshippers in spirit and in truth. But all this is kind of like still a prophecy. And she was trying to steer him away from her personal life. She didn't want to get him into, all that. So that's why she took the neutral topic of let's talk religion. But then, as you highlighted, comes that statement, which,
Yes.
yeah, and yeah, just wanted to,
Yeah, that's good to know because what I'm hearing from you is that in the first 5 chapters of the Torah itself, this is there, like,
yeah.
the Messiah is coming. Yeah,
Hmm.
okay, that's
And
okay.
I'll try to look it up, but I think it is in Deuteronomy at the end that Moses says, God will give you a prophet like me. Uh, any Joes or anybody who is more familiar will be.
Actually, I just wanted to make one comment on the worshiping part that you mentioned about Revelation while you're looking that other topic up. In a way, how we worship right now is actually exactly what Jesus is saying, right?
Yeah.
We don't go to Jerusalem to worship. We worship, wherever we are, right? And God is seeking those who worship him in spirit and in truth, it says. So the present day church is ubiquitous, right? It can be anywhere. And there is a time coming in the future when there's going to be a significant restoration of the Jewish people itself. That's one way to think about future events. I mean, those topics are kind of debated between many scholars, but right now, here and now, even without looking at the future, um, we worship without necessarily having to be at a place, right? God looks at our
Got it.
heart,
Yes.
and we worship him from our heart in
It's
spirit and in truth.
Deuteronomy 18:15. Oh, sorry, Johnny.
Yeah. No,
So,
no. Go back to your topic. Yeah, I just
yeah,
wanted to
so
throw that in there.
Deuteronomy 18, chapter 18, 15th verse. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from you fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. That's what
Excellent. Okay.
Moses prophesied. And this particular verse is what the Muslims take to point to Muhammad. I just wanted to put that out too, because that is what, but this
Deuteronomy,
to
which one?
us,
Which
Deuteronomy
one?
18:15.
Okay.
So one thing I can kind of understand from this is that obviously at the time the right to worship and the place that you want to worship is not just on a particular mountain or in Jerusalem, but then we are opening it up to people who believe, and you're saying that true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, right? So
Hmm.
it is in spirit and truth, and not on the place, and not restricted for somebody. I mean, that's what it is about. So you have to worship Him in spirit and in truth. That's not necessarily on the place. That's because you're worshiping on the God on the concept and not on a particular place, nor is He kind of restricted to a few people and to a few places, but He's open to all who believe in Him. That's what it is. So, all right. So the next one, the
In
disciples.
in
Go
summary,
ahead.
there is no specific place of pilgrimage in Christian faith. Okay,
Yes.
you are visiting Jerusalem to understand the history. No? It's not a
Hmm.
pilgrimage actually.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So
And
good.
actually, maybe one other thing I would say on that one, which I think is really amazing, what we are doing right now, just the four
Yeah.
of us being together,
Yeah.
this
Yes.
this is actually what Jesus is talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
If
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
where two or three people are gathered, right? God is in our midst, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
we can worship in spirit and truth right here, right?
Yeah.
That's just
Yes.
amazing, actually, when you
Yeah.
think about that. Like
Absolutely. Yes.
God's temple is not made of brick and mortar. God's temple is made of you and me, right? And
Oh,
so
oh,
we are the temple of the living God. So that's what the Bible says.
yeah. Okay. Then the disciples return and marvel. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised that he was speaking with a woman. But no one asked him, "What do you want from her?" or "Why are you talking with her?" Then the woman left her water jar, went back into the town, and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" So they left the town and made their way towards Jesus. Meanwhile, the disciples urged him, "Rabbi, eat something." But he told them, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about." So the disciples asked one another, "Could someone have brought him food?" Jesus explained, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Do you not say, 'There are still 4 months until the harvest'? I tell you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are ripe for harvest. Already the reaper draws his wages and gathers a crop for eternal life, so that both the sower and the reaper may rejoice together. For in this case, the saying, one sows and the other reaps, is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and now you have taken up their labor. So uh, it is 34. I was kind of lost when I was able to follow it all the way till here, where he explains to that my food is to do the will of him who sends me and to finish his work. And also there was an effect on some kind of a miracle where the harvest that was supposed to happen and all that were actually done about probably about 4 months in advance. And then again, this one is that I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and now you have taken up their labor. There's also one saying that you sow what you reap, right? I mean, there's so yeah.
That is
I just
not,
want to
yeah,
yeah. I just want to join everything together
yeah.
because
So
from my
this is,
perspective, from 34 to 38, there's a small disconnect. I don't know whether I am not reading it correctly, but I want some
no,
help.
Uh,
All the way from 34 to 38.
yeah.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Shara.
Jose.
So,
No, go ahead, Jose. You were,
yeah, when Murthy was presenting, was reading this, I just what struck my heart is what Jesus is talking here. I'll tell you and lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are ripe for harvest. He is talking about uh, to reach out the people, to gain people for the Christ. That's what I understood here.
Mhm.
And yeah, the people are ready and for yeah,
And
yeah,
that following up on that one, and that is what the commission is, reach out.
yeah.
And that is
So that is
precisely, yeah.
you are also planning to tell the same point, or
No, I wanted to go to the next page.
okay.
Next slide,
And
please.
1 second, yeah,
Ah,
already.
go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So what I understood is Jesus had started there, right? He has sowed the seed. Then the disciples are to reap the harvest further after that. That was
My
uh,
take was not
my
quite
understanding
that.
on
Yeah,
that.
my take was
And further
slightly different.
further what is that? Slide 8, can we go?
No, let's not go there because Murthy is going sequentially. I
Okay.
think, yeah,
No, based on that, I just asked.
yeah.
so here
No,
there are 4 months till 35. It is clear, right? Do you not
mm,
say there are still 4 months until the harvest? I tell you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are ripe for harvest. So logically, I think it takes 4 months for harvest. But then he said, lift up your eyes and look at this. They're already ripe for harvest. I don't know whether I can use the word that they are already ripe for harvest or for they are ripe for harvest at this
Murthy,
point of time.
Murthy, the
Okay.
first sentence is it's a metaphor because he's saying, look at because us, okay, all four of us, we are
Okay.
capable of seeing we are immediate future, even though, like, oh, I will say, oh, you know what, in 2 months, it's going to be snowing. That is something that I know from empirical evidence, I would say. But Jesus in the next sentence is not talking in that limited manner. He is talking, he can see, and he is trying to get his disciples to open their eyes to, the disciples are just like us. They are not
Hmm.
anybody special. They also have to be trained to understand, to comprehend what God is about. So that is what God is trying to tell them. You know, just as you're able to predict the weather and or whatever it takes, in that 4 months, like same here, you know, the people are ready to, to absorb the gospel. And in the next slide, the part that he says, one sows and another reaps, he's talking about all the work that has been done. Like Daniel, I keep going back to Daniel because Daniel's is the biggest example. Even Daniel, they were longing to see the future. They could not really. And we are so lucky, we are on this side. But they were only so all what the prophets have done, not just those were mentioned, and all the work of the prophets, they were instruments of God too. So everything that was done, and now it is for us, the disciples, to. And so what one sows, one they sowed, we reap. You know, that's how I interpret it, and I feel good when I interpret it that way because I feel connected to the work. That's how I feel.
Yeah, maybe just to add, the title of your slide says the disciples return and marvel, right? And the part that you said was very clear and easy to understand. I think I'd like to dwell on that a little bit, right? The disciples come back and they find Jesus having this great conversation. The woman now has herself become an evangelist, right? She's gone and she's brought people over. And then the disciples are like, okay, you know, this is interesting, right? A bunch of Samaritans, if you will. And they're essentially saying, hey, Jesus, we've got food. And Jesus says, my food is of a different variety that you cannot understand. So, it's just a reminder to us that there is a work that Jesus came to accomplish. It was not one of earthly pomp or earthly accomplishment or earthly plenty, if you will, but it was something which was to reach people's hearts. And as his disciples, we also have that same kind of food that will drive us if we are able to reach out to others and really be able to minister to others in ways which the material world cannot. And we have that same privilege. And I'm sure maybe we can relate, right? When you're able to touch another human being in a very meaningful way, that is itself a food that, is of great meaning and great value. So I wanted to dwell on that main thing. The second part, I agree with you. It's a little. He does seem to take a little bit of a tangent there, but I think both what Joe said and Shara said it sounds plausible in my mind. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Uh, many Samaritans believe. Okay. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in Jesus because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And many more believed because of his message. They said to the woman, we now believe not only because of your words, we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man truly is the Christ, the Savior of the world. Now we come to the main topic about healing
So
the.
the other
Go ahead.
one, what I was just, I remember two places where Jesus had a difficulty. One place is Jesus had difficulty in reaching out to Samaria. I was just searching for that portion. One second is, one second.
When he was going to
Yeah,
Jerusalem, they refused to.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think Luke 9:52 to 53, that is one thing. And then another place, it says, his disciple not to enter Samaria. I don't know what reason it is, but this woman has created a breakthrough there in reaching, yeah, like,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
through
yeah.
Jesus' conversation with this woman, she became an vessel to propagate the gospel, and many people believed because of that, because of her.
Do we know the name of this person? Or no? And I see the
No.
reference, but we don't know the name. Okay, okay.
See, in the Bible, when the name is not mentioned, it is usually for our advantage, for our edification, to put ourselves in that spot. So, just as the woman, the woman is pictured as we can compare ourselves favorably to this woman and say, oh, I'm not a gross person like that. But no, if we look carefully, in God, if we look at our own sins, oh, we are no better off. At least I'm no better off. I have my share of huge things. So just as God, so we should put ourselves in that shoe. Man or woman doesn't matter, and then listen. And also the other part where they say not only but because we have heard for one, so they were willing to believe what she said also. So that is the power we have. We are able to convince another. So that's the power that we have. And one more thing I would say is that this woman, this passage to me is very important because of what you highlighted. Not because of what you highlighted, but this is the place where Jesus actually says he is the Messiah. And later, when he's in the court of Pilate, is it then are you the Messiah? And then Jesus answers, so you say. He did not say yes. So this part, the fact that he in that's where when you put yourself in that woman's shoes, it becomes all the more powerful. He's revealing to us he's the Messiah. And so that is why you tend to think of this woman as a gross woman, but put yourself in that shoe, suddenly it takes on a new meaning.
And also this person is very very important in the sense that there is a whole community of people from the town who had a different opinion, but this person was the one who conveyed the message and turned things around, right? So uh, she looks very important and has a very good big role to play. But I was looking for the name and I could not find. But then now I know the context of all this now, right?
And
So
yeah, and I think what we were just saying is that this could be anyone, right?
yeah,
And you know, this Samaritan woman is the most unlikely candidate, if you will, from a
Mm,
earthly perspective of somebody you would choose to become a representative for God.
yeah,
But God
yeah.
uses her. And I think it's
So,
a reminder for each of us that, God can use any of us, right? It doesn't matter how, qualified we are. You don't need PhDs in seminary degrees, whatever, right?
yeah.
God can use any of us in 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 His service.
Okay. So now, coming on to the main topic, how Jesus comes to heal the official son. So after the previous verse, after 2 days, Jesus left for Galilee. Now he himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own hometown. Yet when he arrived, The Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all the great things he had done in Jerusalem. In They had seen all the great things he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they had gone there as well. So once again, Jesus came to Cana in Galilee, where he had turned the water into wine. And there was a royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, who was about to die. Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe." The official said, "Okay, come down before my child dies." But then this is the most important sentence here. "Go," said Jesus, "your son will live." And the man took Jesus at his word and departed. Go through that, but then here, this is what it is. "Go," said Jesus, "your son will live." So this is the context of all that. There's a person, whose son say, lays sick at a place. Then he had heard about Jesus, and he had come from Judea to Galilee. He went and begged him to come down and heal his son. Actually, his son was sick, and then he was sick in one place, but he went to another place and saw Jesus there, and then told him about his problems. And he told him to come to the place where his child was, but then he didn't go. He said, "Go, your son will live." Right? This is pretty important, because it's like Jesus and this person are in one place, but his son was actually sick and dying in another place. And just his words, I mean, it's not that, it's just faith and words. He just told him, "Just go, and then your son will live." And then the man took Jesus at this word and departed. And I will go through this slide here, but this is the main thing: is that just his word, saying that, "Go, your son will live." The next slide, the man took Jesus at his word and departed. And while he was still on the way, his servants met him with the news, "Your boy is alive." So he inquired as to the hour when his son had recovered, and they told him, "The fever left him yesterday at the seventh hour." Then the father realized that this was the very hour in which Jesus had told him, "Your son will live." And he and all his household believed. This was now the second sign that Jesus performed after coming from Judea into Galilee. Allowed to research the first sign, but then this is now the second sign. So you correlate all this together. One person had a sick son, and then he went to another place, and then Jesus told him, "Go, he'll be living." And then he left that place to go back to uh, the place where his son was. He learned that the fever had subsided, and when he was trying to time everything together, he can kind of relate it to the exact point in time when Jesus said this word that your son will live, right? So that was, a miracle. And, you know, with all the miracles that were happening, but this curing of this sick person just by his words and by his belief and faith is something very remarkable. So,
Yeah, it is indeed. Actually, I was struck by the first verse here. It says, "The man took Jesus at his word." So there was a receptive heart on the part of that man, of the father, where, first of all, he traveled to find Jesus where he was. And
mm,
then when Jesus said, "Go," he received that. And to me, it strikes me as a parallel to
mm,
what is the way in which we relate to God. we come to him, of course, and in a context of, let's say, we find our dependence on him, our need of him, our need of rescue, our need of whatever it is that we are facing. And then when God gives us, shows us his word, his promise, his command, his encouragement, we receive that and we take it at his word, and then go about our daily lives. So I think there's a parallel there to how we live our
Yep.
daily lives.
Yep.
I have to add to this. This is something, a conversation I had at my home yesterday. Okay. So, as I said, Ponu's fiance Rohan's father has stage 4 cancer. And yesterday at home, I was saying, like, we have to persistent prayer. That was what I was talking about. We have to pray on that. And I told my kids and Kunya, how when my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, my neighbor, a very close friend of mine, across the road, just in front of my house, her brother is a Catholic priest. Okay. And so he came to me when he heard this. He came to our house and then he said, you have to accept, this, and then you will be at peace, something like that. And that was contrary to what I was about. Okay. For me, I'm I'm working with God. I'm seeking, the help from God. And it is against my grain to say, oh, okay, I just, that is not how I do things. And so it was kind of like, it was persistent prayer. And I truly believe it. And as I told my kids yesterday, it is that this official could also have stayed with his son, and then accepted it. It would not have. You have to believe God can do that. That is something that. And then Ponyu was saying, Amma, because of Acha's thing, Renu was diagnosed after that. So she just dropped a prayer and she thought she was done with that for Renu. And then Renu would survive. That's Ponyu talking in her, at her understanding. And then I said, that point, you also need to understand that when I pray, the fervor with which I pray for my father will never be the fervor with which I pray for Renu, no matter what. I can say that with, in all honesty, that's my testimony I'm giving, that part. So that's what I'm trying to say here is that we have to be, we have to pray, that is the job of family members. So that is why that connection is there that God gave us. It is the family members have to pray. Nobody else. There is no other way. Somebody else's prayer will have that same effect. That's why this father went to Jesus. He did not. And in another case, you can see the father saying that, oh, my servant is sick. You come. You don't come. You just say what. But that's a different, higher level thing. But this father went to Jesus. He did not send somebody. He's a royal official. He went to Jesus because the fervor with which a father or an immediate, in my case, I'm the daughter, but what I'm trying to say is just the same. There is no replacement for that. The immediate family members, you're not there for just the joyous occasions. We have a role in life, that prayer. Now, it is mine and Ponu's, limitation that we are not able to extend that same fervor to others. But this means, much to me. That father, I just had to say that.
Yeah. And also one thing that I comes to me here is that, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. Read this here. Unless you see signs and wonders, you will never believe. Then he said, "Come down before my child dies," and he said, "Very simple. Your son will leave. Go. Your son will leave. That's it." And then that's it. I mean, he recovered, and then they knew that the recovery happened at the literally at the time an hour when he was speaking, right? He was speaking here saying that, you will leave, and then, as he was speaking, the miracle was happening here. And then that's when people started believing that this was the very hour in which Jesus had told him, and he and all his household believed. So now, can anybody tell me the first sign that Jesus had performed, when he came into Galilee? I mean, this is the second one, obviously, but
It
does
is
anyone know the first one?
yeah, I'll tell you the portion. It's the wine, right, Johnny?
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
the
that's
water
what I was
turned to
thinking.
wine, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, that is the first miracle. He's saying after coming from Judea to Galilee. It's not referring to that. Water
What
turning
was the first?
water turning to wine is the first miracle of Jesus. No? So
Yeah.
this particular verse is not referring to that.
Okay.
See read that verse, no?
Mm.
Performed after coming from Judea into Galilee. Maybe we need to see the other gospel too. I don't have any clue of.
I was thinking of the same thing that Shara was thinking about, which is that the first miracle was the first sign was the water turning into wine.
That's John 2. In John 2.
Yeah.
But as
But this
just to
particular verse in first, it's not about that, right? The 54, if you see.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So,
Murthy, to go to that thing, go to the next slide, please. No, the previous slide where Jesus says that unless you people see signs and wonders. So what it is that what Jesus is referring to is that people could believe the, turning the loaves and pieces of fish that they could see. So it's a tangible evidence. They could see and do that, and people could believe other places where Jesus healed. Once he healed a blind person by spitting, taking the spittle and rubbing it, and all that. Some of those they could see, and they were witness to it, and they could see the signs and wonders, and they could believe that. But in this particular case, this is what, and especially the the quadriplegic. The lowering of the mat when Jesus said your sins are forgiven, they could not believe. But when Jesus asked him to
okay.
get up and walk, they could believe. Okay,
Was
so
that in Galilee? I think
I
that
don't
was.
know. I do not know. I'm not.
I'm just trying to connect. I think
Yeah,
that incident was in Galilee. I think I'm not very sure of that.
but anyway,
Mm.
if the people were to see it, they will believe. But this man, that is why the connection is. Unless don't you are waiting for the sign and wonder, you're not going to get it. But it is the word. Your son will live. That is why that's how I'll see it.
And maybe, Shara, what you're also trying to say is that it's almost like an indictment on those people, right? When Jesus
Yeah,
is saying this, right? It's
yeah,
not like he's not commending them. He's actually
yeah.
criticizing them
Yeah.
for being so caught up on signs and wonders. And in fact, I think there is many other passages as well where Jesus actually is capable of lots of signs and wonders, right? But he was loath to perform signs and wonders to increase a following, right? He would not do that. He would perform signs and wonders out of compassion for the people who actually needed healing or whatever it was. And there is a verse which I don't quite know the reference off the top of my head, but it talks about a wicked generation seeks for a sign. And it's actually almost a sign of unbelief where you keep wanting a sign because you see a sign and a wonder, you'll come up with other rational explanations for why that could have happened, right? There is an underlying heart of unbelief that no matter what is shown, you still won't believe, right? In other words, how high of a miracle must happen before you believe, right? And in some cases, the bar is so high, the person will never believe. Doesn't
Never
matter.
believe.
Yeah.
See,
So
Johnny,
people
when I
can
was
say that it is
yeah,
a stage managed thing.
yeah,
Right?
no. See,
That's
when
right.
I was researching the parting of the Red Sea, You wouldn't believe the scientific evidence that were there out there when I was doing the research on how, at that particular moment in time, the situation was that the sea would part. And, you know, it is so much more easier to believe.
Yeah. So some people say, right, hey, God has not given me enough evidence. That's why I don't believe. I mean, you sometimes hear that type of thing, right? A key question is, okay, how much evidence are you talking about, right? Because, we essentially have lots of evidence, if you will. The problem is not the lack of evidence. The problem is that our hearts are actually hearts of unbelief, right? We are essentially just factories of unbelief, if you will. And that heart needs a transformation. That heart needs to kind of change, be touched to receive. And this is actually why I said that thing, right? That this man received that promise from God, and a heart that receives what God has for us, that heart, is the one that is blessed and transformed and changed into what, all the blessings that the Bible is talking about. But the same, the saying, right? The same sun that melts the wax hardens the clay, right? So a heart that is opposed to God, no matter what, you might be see the same miracle, but that heart just gets hardened. And, so it's that I think, Murthy, you had taught us about the sower parable some time ago, right? The same seed
Yeah.
falls on
Yes,
different
yeah.
ground, and there is a ground that it produces fruit, and that God's touch has to be there to transform our hearts into being that kind of a soil.
And totally
Yeah.
out of context. I know we are at time. So there is also the part that God needs to constantly touch us. And it is there in the Bible, I believe in Matthew, somewhere where it says about, there's this bad spirit leaving the body. And then, it is going around looking for another home. And by the time then it finds or comes back, find that this person is all clean. And what it does is that it comes back with seven other deadly, evil things. And then I mean, but that is how receptive we are to. Suddenly, we are, it's that portion is the most humbling portion for me in the Bible because that is me right there. It is so
So,
hard.
so
Thanks, sir. You can stop
when
recording if you want, but it's up to you.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.